Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Audit and Scrutiny Committee for Children's Services, Education and Skills on the D-Day, the 6th of June. There are no planned fire drills this evening, I've been led to believe. If you hear the fire alarm, please treat this as a real emergency. Evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or the public gallery. Exit via the door to the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, the pavement opposite the police station. The lift can't be used in the event of an emergency. Please do not enter the building. Advise it is safe to do so by a member staff. So, apologies. We have 3 apologies this evening. Councillor Medland, Councillors Lever and Councillor Downer, and I don't believe the Alliance have managed to find a replacement despite trying very hard to find one. So Councillor Quigley has to leave at 6:20 tonight. So we might be slightly liberal with the agenda because at that point, obviously, we're not recording the meeting, but before 8, by a miracle, someone else turns up. So I think we'll just go through the agenda as far as we can. And at a certain point, we'll next time frame. So quickly, I'm actually delighted to be chair of this committee. I've never chaired a committee before, but obviously this is my area of knowledge and interest. So I'm pleased to be chairing the committee. I want to thank Richard. Richard's done a great job chairing this for 3 years, and graciously, without a battles to fight, decided not to be chair this year. So I'm not do introductions around the table. Got a lot to do in a non-political manner, so I won't play politics with children. So I'm not going to do around the room. Our parent governors, not. I didn't know. They apologised or? Okay. Okay. We were expecting the parent governors and the dice online, but neither has happened to date. So, item number 2, the minutes of the meeting of the 7th of March. Any questions, councillors, on the minutes of the meeting? Can I have a proposal proposed by Vanessa, seconded by Richard? Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I did actually have a couple of comments.
Okay, beg your pardon. I need to look at my right.
It's just you want me to just quickly go through them?
Yes, please.
So in the paragraph 43, in the 3rd section, it talks about committee given assurance that there would be multiple consultations to gather provide information on the planning item. I haven't listened back to exactly what I said, but I don't think I said there would be multiple consultations. I think the discussion was around there would be multiple opportunities for stakeholders to participate in engagement, and there would be some consultation. Not that there would be multiple. There's only ever planned to be 2 consultations. Now only going to be 1 because. So I just wanted to back of the change. And also in paragraph 40, there's talk about the ILACS, the action plan following the Ofsted ILACS inspection. The plan that was presented last time was the draft plan, final action plan. I thought it was important that that was noted in there. And then in paragraph 45, first paragraph, talks about something that Naomi was talking about around payment. And it says that improvements have been made in areas. I think that should be some rather than. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for your detailed section of the minutes. Do I sign these as or and then when I sign the amended? Sign these and you note the amendment. Yeah. Sign it. Okay. Still happy to, Vanessa and Richard second it. So all those in favour of the minutes as amended by Ashley? Yeah. You weren't here. Any abstaining? So, yeah, passed, yeah. Okay. So, item 3, declaration of interest. Anyone declaration of interest not already declared on your council declaration of interest? Okay. Item 4, election of vice chairman. I would like to, from the chair, nominate that Richard it takes the role as vice chair of the committee. I know we've had a chat earlier, so I'd like to nominate Richard vice chair. Any other one? All in favour? Thank you, Richard, and thank you again for what you've done over the last 3 years. So Richard, yeah. Okay. Public question time. We have no public questions, written or shown in the gallery. So swiftly on to number 6, the progress update. Very short item, so much as there's only one item on there. Found the list of events and bits and pieces. I know you've got a lot to do, Kay, so an update.
In regards to the events, so we are actually reviewing what children looked after events will take place throughout the year. However, we haven't got a defined share with you at this time. We've just re-established the core parenting board, so it's part of the terms of themes, and also we have to triangulate that with our population agenda. So, it may be about 3 that's ready and finalised. Scope out what events will take place.
So the September meeting.
Yes.
We'll have it by the September meeting. Perfect. Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Okay, thanks, Kay. Okay. Item 7, the performance budget and children's services transformation. You'll lead, Ashley, yeah? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on your
Thank you.
election
Thank you.
as Chair, and also to Councillor Quigley for Vice Chair. So I'm going to say just a few things. The paper's been circulated. It's a very broad paper covering lots of different topics. But just a reminder of what the recommendations are, is just that the committee notes operational financial performance of the new directorate, our planning around what happens relating to the service level agreements when they finish at the end of January 2025, about the progress we're making with the key priorities which we identified at the March meeting within the directorate, and then the fourth area is just some other matters arising that have come up since the last meeting. So the things I'd like to draw people's attention to, first of all, about the needs that we're seeing amongst children, young people and families on the island. The needs that we're seeing continue to be high. And if I just pick a couple of examples from the 2 main areas within the directorate, first of all, the area which Naomi leads on around education, inclusion and access. If we look at levels of or the numbers of children who are coming forward for assessments for education healthcare plans, we continue to see really high numbers of children needing to have an education and healthcare plan for their needs to be met. If we think about the children's social care side and the area of the directorate which Kay leads, and we look at the data which is in the report around the numbers of children in all areas of the system, actually, they remain very, very high. And so, of course, what that means is that the workload which we're seeing across all teams, I would say universally across the directorate, are very, very high. And so I'm really grateful to all colleagues for the work that they're putting in to meet the needs of these children, young people and families at these continuing high levels. The second thing I wanted to draw people's attention to is around what's happening in addition to that in terms of the very significant transformation agenda that we have within the directorate at the same time. So some of these transformation areas relate to the establishment of the new Children's Services Directorate. So, for example, the planning around the service level agreements, and in the report I've explained what they are, and I've given a couple of examples about the work that's going on to do with the multi-agency safeguarding hub and to do with the planning around the educational psychology provision that we have on the island. Some of these were pieces of transformation which were in train anyway. So if we think, for example, about the case management system within children's social care and the transfer from the system which is currently called ICS and the move to Mosaic, that has been a significant piece of transformation work which has been going on for indeed several years. But that continues, and indeed, as I've explained in the report, there have been some changes around that as well. But some of this transformation relates to the priorities which we've identified as a new directorate. So, for example, on the education side, the education strategy, the 2030 education strategy and the development of that, the transformation around special educational needs and disabilities, and also the transformation work around school-placed planning. And of course, on the children's social care side, we have the work around improvements in the youth justice system. We have the work relating to the action plan from the ILATS inspection. And we also have the changes which Kay's already referred to around corporate parenting. And there are also still aspects of the new service which are still being formulated. So if we think about, for example, the data and intelligence team that has been established, as I put in the report, we still have significant vacancies within that. And those new colleagues in there are having to deal with significant amounts of manual workarounds because of the issues we have with the IT systems, which are in the progress of being improved. So there's a very wide-ranging and I would say challenging transformation agenda as well, that we're having to make sure that we implement at the same time as dealing with very high levels of day-to-day operational requirements around meeting the needs of children and young people on an immediate basis. And then the third thing I wanted to say, really, in the light of that, is a big thank you to colleagues, because colleagues are demonstrating huge amounts of commitment to delivering on this challenging agenda. And I want to say thank you not just to the senior leaders in the directorate, some of whom are here today and some of who are not, but also to every single colleague within the Children's Services Directorate who are dealing with significant amounts of change and high levels of need amongst children and families. I'd also like to take a moment to say thank you to Debbie Price, who is going to be leaving the council. Tomorrow is her last day. And I'm sure you would all join me in thanking her for the huge amount of support that she has provided for children, young people and families on the island over many years. And not just that, but also for the leadership that she has displayed in a number of different roles over the years as well. And she's left a real mark on the island, and we're extremely grateful to her service over those years. So Debbie, thank you very much. The other two groups I'd like to just say thank you to are colleagues across the council, because with this very challenging transformation agenda, we're working very closely with colleagues in the other departments. So, for example, adult social care, we're working increasingly closely with them, not just in terms of looking at pathways into adulthood, about working with colleagues in housing, but also, for example, colleagues in the IT service who are responding very rapidly in a very supportive fashion to some of the challenges we have around these systems and the data reporting elements. So we're very grateful to them. But also, as I've put in the report, because of the volume of transformation change and the volume of work to be done, we're engaging with some external parties as well. So specifically the Local Government Association and also the South East Sector-led Improvement Partnership, which is a collection of local authorities throughout the South East. And we're tapping into the expertise that they have across that group. And they are, we're talking to them about how we can bring some of their resource in to help us on some of the transformation work that we want to do. So those are the points I wanted to make about the report. And we're very happy now to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, Ashley. And I have to say, I should have said earlier, report-wise, as far as I'm concerned, reports, I take it for read that all councils have read reports. So it's good to have key points brought out. I want to spend most of the time on all reports focusing on the questions as opposed to listening to those. So thank you for the, picking out the key salient points. I also say, Debbie, I remember the day Debbie started here when she was first recruited, when I was cabinet member, and the job she's done fostering and adoption, the Island Council has been brilliant. So personally, I remember when you were first recruited, first time we ever met. So thank you from personally as well. So questions, Councillor Quigley.
Well done, Debbie. Good luck, whatever you're doing. I'm assuming you're not retiring, are you? I'm going to say far too young. Not so much a question, and I don't want to tempt fate, but just to say thank you for the blistering start you've all made, because I know it's not been easy. And we were concerned when Hampshire said they were withdrawing, but I think I've got several points of contact within the directorate, and every single one of them seems very different to how it used to be. And the feeling and the words I get from staff are that they feel very motivated about what comes next. So it's a very exciting time. So the only question I have, and I'll probably ask this repeatedly as we go through, is it's a very big danger that the political process slows down what is your process. So is there anything we can do or not do that means you can stay on track? I know we have to scrutinise, but we're also a policy committee, so it isn't just about sticking a finger in your chest and making you feel uncomfortable. It's also to make sure you can keep the speed up. So is there anything at all that we can do as councillors?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So a lot of the transformation work requires a really good understanding amongst members of what the key issues are and why this transformation is required. We've invested a lot of time in briefing, actually not just councillors, but the wide range of stakeholders to make sure that they understand why this transformation is needed. And so I guess anything that the committee can do to share these key messages across the full range of elected members to make sure that people understand how absolutely key some of these changes are, how vital they are, would be very gratefully received. The key point, I think, is that in all the transformation work that we are proposing and driving forward, this is about improving outcomes for children and young people. And some of the decisions that will have to be made are difficult. And they will be decisions that not everyone will support. But our role is to make sure that when decisions are made, that they are made in a fully informed fashion, that people understand the benefits of making these decisions and the consequences of not making them, so that these decisions are made in a properly informed way. So, for example, when we hold all member briefings on topics, which we have done in the past, if people can encourage people to come to them to make sure they are. I'll give you an example. I was at a public engagement session, one of the I think it was 7 we held across the island for all stakeholders. We had lots of parents and carers, school staff along to them. And I had some feedback from an elected member that they didn't necessarily know about some of the things we were talking about. And actually we had gone to quite a lot of effort to advertise sessions where people could have come along and access that material. So we're doing everything we can, but anything you can do to support that would be very gratefully received.
Councillor Churchman.
Yes, I'm a bit children. It's obviously me. 20,000 children, but we've got a population of 142, and therefore I would be very stage visited MASH. It was extremely effective, but as I said, I have a reservation about that. Another thing that worries me is education psychology. I can't help wondering sometimes whether, do we need the psychology? Is it because the children don't get enough exercise for a start? Is it because they eat the wrong food and the children are almost being encouraged? Oh, I don't feel well. Oh, I've got a mental health problem. And this really does concern me, that we are creating or have created an industry regarding mental health. I mean, others might disagree. Living on the island isn't helpful because the future for the children is not that great. We don't have enough employment, but I'm still very concerned about the psychological element. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for those points. If I may respond on each of them in turn. So the multi-agency safeguarding hub, you're right to raise it. It's a significant piece of work to set it up. And Kay's now leading on that work. Now she's been in post since the 18th of March. And we are also talking to, I mentioned 2 external parties. One of them we're talking to about bringing some external expertise in as well to help us on that piece of work. It is a significant piece of work. And it's important we get it right. And that's why it's being prioritised as one of the main pieces of work that we need to do under transformation. I did put in the report that one of the early conclusions of the feasibility study of what future options are is that it's not practical to set up a different arrangement by the end of January. These things will take a lot of time. It's not something the local authority can do on its own. It has to work with health colleagues and the police. And there are recruitment elements to it and systems elements to it. And I've already talked about some of the things that are happening with systems. So we're not going to rush this. We're going to do it properly. And Hampshire, we're pleased to say, have agreed that they're going to work with us on that extension, even though it's not, strictly speaking, parts of the service level agreement. In terms of the educational psychology, we do need educational psychology on the island for lots of different reasons. And I'll give you one of them. So the council has statutory duties around the education and healthcare plan system. And in order for us to deliver those statutory duties, we do have to have educational psychology input. There is a discussion about how much additional educational psychology we need above and beyond the educational psychology we need to deliver that statutory duty. And that perhaps could be delivered in a better way, a different way, but we absolutely do need educational psychology on the island.
I have 4 questions, actually. I'll do them all separately. The first question you sort of touched on, the first question was around paragraph 3.2 mentions that current arrangements for MASH and Ed Psych comes to the 1st of February. We need to think beyond that. You've also you touched on the fact that Hampshire, could still do those services for us. Is that a definite they will if we don't set our own up? Or are we looking, because 1st of February will come along quite quickly if we're not careful. 3.2 says we need to start planning for future delivery.
Sorry. We have written confirmation that they will assist us in extending provision beyond the end of January. As I've put in the report, we haven't agreed terms for that in terms of costs, etc.
I actually think the MASH across all ages, because of our size, actually I think could work on the island. Well, I've been to MASH on the mainland and it's brilliant, but because of our size, MASH just for children may not be big enough to attract the people and the size and the scale that we need. So I think across all ages, it could actually be what the Isle of Wight actually needs is something different. So I think that could, I get the challenges. I think that could work. So my second question, educational healthcare plans, obviously we've got loads. We've got a lot compared to other authorities. I've sat on the panel and seen how they work, and the system works really well. But I noticed that the timescale for issuance of 20 weeks has gone down considerably from 85% to 33%. I know requests have gone up, but the increase in numbers doesn't equate to me to a 42% drop in timeframes. Is there another reason for that?
So this decrease in the adherence to the 20-week issuance timescale for education healthcare plans is something that's happening in many, many local authorities around the country. And I guess it's a function of several things, really. Every single education and healthcare plan requires many different assessments and reports to be written. And at the moment, if in the national system, there are a certain number of caseworkers in SEN teams across local authorities coordinating this. And there is a very significant increase in the volume of work that's going through those teams everywhere. We are doing everything we can to get that back up towards 100%, because historically the Isle of Wight's performed pretty well. But this decrease, I was talking to a local authority the other day who's actually on 0. But this is going to be an ongoing challenge. Now, part of this is in the gift of the local authority because we run the caseworkers who coordinate the education and healthcare plan statutory process. But that process is also reliant on other partners. So, for example, if the child requires an assessment from a speech and language therapist or an occupational therapist, they will need to do an assessment and write a report on that child. And there are timelines as well that relate to the provision of that advice. So partners, they are the statutory process is they're meant to provide advice within 6 weeks. And if that 6-week timeline is not delivered, that has a knock-on effect for the local authority's ability to hit that 20-week window. So one of the things that we're looking at in understanding what we need to do to get that 20-week issuance number back up is understanding which partners, which teams, is it physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, educational psychology, who are the partners who need to allocate perhaps additional resource to get those reports back on time? Because if they're not hitting their 6 weeks, it makes it very challenging for the local authority to hit their 20-week timeline. So that's what we're doing about it at the moment. It's linked into conversations around the earlier point, or actually, because if we think about it in the sense of educational psychologists, who are very frequent contributors to this statutory process, how much capacity do we need on the island for the educational psychology element of that to be able to meet those deadlines? So that's part of the mapping out of what capacity we need in educational psychology. And actually at the SEND Partnership Board at the end of June, so that's the second sitting of the new SEND Partnership Board, we're actually having the deep dive focus is actually on health provision. So it's waiting times for these services to look at what capacity we have in the system and how timely we're able to deliver this support, because there's a link, because it's the same practitioners who are delivering support to children who are already in the system, but B, doing assessments on new children who are coming into the system. And if you do more of one, you perhaps have less of an ability to do the other. So we're working closely with colleagues from Health and the Integrated Care Board on that as well.
The third question, so I was just reading the report 4.1.10 about our hard work in recruiting, retaining decent social workers and reliance upon interim agency workers. I know it's a real challenge. How short are we and how many interims have we got? Just as a guide.
Well, if, for example, in our child assessment and safeguarding teams, where we have the highest demand really in the system, but also where we're struggling most to recruit permanent social workers. So at the moment, we know that we've got on average around 60% reliance on agency social workers. There is a however, so we have a plan of how we're going to tackle that and explore that. So there's been a lot of work that's taken place over recent months, and Debbie actually has been integral to that work as our principal social worker, working alongside workforce development to look at how we recruit internally our own social workers. So there's been a scheme whereby our family practitioners have had an opportunity to be able to qualify as social workers. So only 2 months ago, I think Debbie was working on looking at how 12 new social workers into the system will be placed into those permanent vacancies, which will mean that in the longer term, we can release some of those agency social workers. And we're also looking at a campaign for recruitment at the moment so that we can celebrate what is good and exciting and excellent about working on the island, so that we can have a rolling programme going forward. So we appreciate that that's really high at the moment. And actually the calibre of agency social workers that we do have, we're very fortunate because they are very committed, they're very experienced and they're very loyal to us. But yeah, certainly we want to improve on our permanent recruitment strategy.
Really good to hear, actually, because I reliance on it's hard sometimes. That leads us to the last point. So the other way, I read the post-inspection action plan report. It's really good. You know, they are actually rightfully proud that we've obtained a good rating. It's a real detailed report. My concern is there's a lot of ambers on there, which means we're on track. But to deliver all of those ambers needs a lot of man hours at times you're going through transformation yourself, school place planning. It's a real stretch on the team. Are you confident that all those ambers, you know, won't slip back to red? And in fact, most of them would change to green. So there's a lot of ambers to deal with at the same time, isn't there?
You're right to raise the point that there's a lot of work going on. And so what we're doing is we're working with colleagues across the council and indeed external people as well, LJ, Southeast Sector Led Improvement Partnership, to access as much resource as we can to help us on the implementation of this work. But it's true that some of those elements of the action plan are very challenging to deliver. So, for example, the piece around the case management system, the move from ICS to Mosaic, that is a very challenging situation. The addressing of the agency social worker situation, the high numbers of children which individual social workers are responsible for, which Ofsted raised, that is a challenging situation to address. And that one is something which is being experienced by local authorities across the country. Many other authorities face the same issues. So we're doing everything we can on that. As we put in the report, actually, there's been a decision actually to pause the project around moving from ICS to Mosaic because it was felt we needed to look again at the Mosaic specification to make sure that the specification in Mosaic that was implemented was going to be fit for purpose long term, given the uncertainty around, for example, the future MASH arrangements. We needed to make sure that the case management system did have the flexibility to deal with that when it happens. So that is going to take longer than we hoped. It's probably also going to cost some more money relative to what was previously allocated to it, but it's the right thing to do for children and families on the island in the long term. But you're absolutely right to raise it. There's a very significant amount of transformation work in here, including certain elements of the ILACS action plan.
Thank you. Do you have any further questions? Councillor Quigley.
Just one to Kay really is in terms of the social workers, obviously the pay is an uplift of your agency. Are we getting in the way? Have you been able to recruit by not managing the pay of permanent staff? So in terms of, we pay agency a lot more than we would do permanent staff. Are we as a council getting in the way? Have you been able to attract permanent staff because we're not adjusting the pay rate? So, if you're in £35 an hour as an agency worker, you're not going to take on the job for 30 grand a year.
I'm not sure that the issues around recruitment is just pay solely. I think it's also that stretch of water. It's being able to find appropriate accommodation, where you're going to live. And at the moment, we actually pay, we do provide permanent staff with a market supplement, which is in addition to what their normal pay scale would be. I think what we do need to review going forward is the longevity of that, because that's an interim position to enable us to recruit. But the wider issues as well is about how we market what we have to offer on the island. So, for example, there's real work-life balance opportunities. So there's a lot that we can do alongside reviewing the pay options also. So at the moment, I don't think that's the barrier because we pay the market supplement. But certainly in the longer term, we need to review whether we do a comparison by other local authorities also, because it is an issue, particularly when we look at our leaders within the organisation, so team managers, service managers and so on, because comparatively on the island, pay is much lower. So I think in the longer term, we will need to review that to be realistic, really, about any of those recruitment issues.
So, councillors, are we happy just to note the recommendations, item 2 on page 12? propose that we note the record.
Can I just add though, actually, it is nice, and I don't mean this is detrimental to Hampshire, but it's nice to have such an honest and transparent report. I don't feel like there's anything hidden in that at all. And I think the fact that you've put so many ambers, I don't see that as a failing at all. I think that's new eyes looking at a system that was probably about to fall over. And again, I don't mean to blow smoke, but I think that's actually a good thing from where we are now because we're very early on. So thank you.
I agree. There's an awful lot going on that we should be grateful for and more to do. And as Councillor Quigley said, it'd be nice. We want to work with you on the policies and the way forward. So, someone happy? We all note. Show of hands. We note this recommendations. Okay. Thank you very much. I think because we're doing okay for time, I think we'll just stick with the normal agenda at this point, because we're. As Councillor Quigley said, no. I think, yeah, as you say, the sufficiency report has gone through cabinet. So I think we'll move on to item 8, the childcare sufficiency assessment 24-25. So I'll assume all councillors have read the detailed report, the salient points to pick out, and then we'll open up to questions.
Okay, so the purpose of the report is just to provide an update on how the local authority secures sufficient childcare places to meet parental demand. And it is a statutory duty that we hold as a local authority. The report is completed annually, and this particular report is based from January to December 2023. And obviously things change quite quickly within the childcare market, so it's just a snapshot of that time. The data from this report was captured from the early years census and the early years funding portal. We had parental surveys, provider surveys, surveys from public health, housing, and other national data sources that we put into the full report. On the Isle of Wight currently, we have 78 providers, 35 of these are private, 13 are school-based, which by that we mean that they take children from 2 years of age. So they take children from 2 to 11. We have one school that actually takes from a birth to 11. And we have 30 childminders. But that's decreased since this report's come out in terms of those numbers of childminders. That is a national trend, the number of childminders decreasing across the whole country. When we look at our offset judgments for early years, 97% of our early years providers on the island are judged good or above. So that's in line with national figures. We have a really good mixture of available childcare on the island, where we've got 77% of our childcare offering beyond term time. Again, that's just above national on the island. And at this time, the time of the report being written, we had 101 children, early years SEND children that were being directly supported in our early years settings. The next section on there looks at the funding rates on the early years children. We have 85.6% of 2-year-olds taking up childcare offer on the island, which again is above national. Currently, our 3 and 4-year-old cohort has decreased, but this is linked to the very low birth rate that we're experiencing on the island, which eventually obviously has that knock-on effect moving forward. We also have a slight decrease in the number of childcare places available on the island, which is due to some providers closing and due to providers changing their opening times. But we do still have sufficient places on the island, so that hasn't caused us any concern at this moment. As I said, childminders are decreasing, and that's due to the low wage that is on offer and due to the really high responsibility that childminders have of looking after really young children in their homes. And again, that's national in regards to that. We are looking at a workforce campaign on the island to try and encourage more childminders into the childcare market, which is also a national campaign that the DFE are also doing at the moment. Despite of the financial challenges and what's happening on the market at the moment, we do have sufficient childcare places on the island for any parent that wishes to send their early years child to an early years setting who wishes to go to work. So at the moment, we are doing that. We are meeting our statutory duty. The report also talks about their HAF delivery, which talks about the DFE funded programme, which is aimed to deliver an enriching holiday activity and a nutritious meal for all those children who receive benefit-related free school meals on the island. And that's been a huge success on the island. It's been growing. We deliver in the Christmas period, in the Easter period and the summer period, and it has been growing strength and strength as the time's gone on. We've had an increased number of secondary children that attends that, with 21% increase this year, which is amazing to get those secondary children in those really good activities. And we've had a 10.7% increase with primary children also attending those activities. So it's been a real success on the island during those periods for those families that find those periods of school holiday sometimes a real pinch point. They can, you know, children are being fed during that time, which is brilliant. And then the report goes on to talk a little bit about the EHCPs on the island. As said before, there is an increased number of children, early years children that have got EHCPs. Currently, there are at the time of writing the report, there were 62 children who are early years children that have EHCPs. With our portage workers, we have about 60 children at the moment who are on the caseload in regards to portage workers for early years children. The report then goes on to talk about the new expanded entitlement that is rolling out across the country, which you have probably heard about. With phase 1 from April 2024, working parents of 2-year-olds were able to access 15 hours of childcare support. So we rolled that out on the island April this year, which again was a successful rollout, and all children that were age 2 or above that wanted that childcare place were able to access a childcare place. Phase 2 is September 2024, where 15 hours of childcare support will be extended to working parents for children from the age of 9 months to 3-year-olds. At the moment, we've been mapping that out and looking at what that looks like, and we are predicting that we will have enough places for those children for September 2024. Phase 3 from September 2025, working parents of children aged 9 months to the age of 5 will be entitled to 30 hours of childcare. You know, that's difficult to predict, because it's difficult to predict on the island how many of our parents will actually use that and what that will look like. So at the moment, we're mapping that out across the island. We also need to consider about school place planning and what that looks like moving forward and how that will affect our early years sector. So at the moment, we are mapping it out, and we'll see what that looks like as we move forward. We also need to take into account on the island, our workforce is very different to across the water. We have a lot of tourism on the island, and so parents may only need that 30 hours for specific times throughout the year, which we could possibly manage quite well, that we might not be able to manage if it's across the whole year. So we just need to think about all the different scenarios that will come into play for September. And that's it really in the full report. But actually, you know, what I can say is that at the moment, we are meeting statutory duty, and the level of early year settings that are out there is really good. So we're offering a good service.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Teresa. It is, I mean, there's a lot of report. It did take some reading, but sorry, yeah, but you know, fantastic. You know, I don't think there's anything missing from what I can see, which makes it hard, in all honesty. So all I will say is, in terms of the problem train coming out down the track, is there anything in particular we need to be aware of that you need help with? And if you had a magic wand, what would you be waving it at?
We do need to consider, obviously, we've been working very closely in regards to the school place planning with what that looks like. As I said, we've got 13 schools that are 2 to 11 provisions. So if one of those schools is named, then that's going to have an impact on the early years sector. We also have over 70% of our early years settings are also on a school, on school grounds. So what does that then look like if a school closes and we've still got an early years setting on that same ground? and we need to consider even simple things like utilities. If the gas and electricity was supplied through the school, what does that then look like if the school closes and the preschool remains? And we need to consider, I think, in terms of that labour market, what the labour market looks like moving forward on the island, because that will affect what, you know, who will be sent, what children will come into the early years sector. And I think that campaign about it's not an easy job working with early years children, and I think we need to highlight actually that it's a real challenge, but the success of it is immense, because actually they are the foundation blocks of moving forward for our education system. If we get that right in early years, then it's going to improve as it goes on. Annie? You know, capacity is always an issue, you know, at the moment across the local authority. In terms of my SEND team, as I said, I've got 60 children who are 20 per portage worker on their caseload, and I've got a 6-month waiting list at the moment. And some of the danger of that is those children that are on that waiting list, they may start school before we get to them. So, you know, it would be good to have an outreach worker that can then support those children in that interim period, those children that are on that 6-month waiting list. I know. It's a magic wand.
Teresa, thank you for such a detailed and comprehensive report. It's good to read and hear that we have got sufficient places on the island. It's really encouraging. You picked up, you know, the one threat is if a school closes with a preschool provision, the schools tend to pick up the energy bills and not charge very much to the preschools. But obviously, if the school wasn't there, the energy costs would be massive. Some of the preschools that are borderline financially could be a problem to them. But it's all very positive. You know, the birth rate figures indicate why there's a school place planning problem. It highlights it in your report. But what do you see as the biggest threat to what is a satisfactory position at the moment?
I guess in terms of parents, an increased number of children coming into the market. So although our birth rate is falling, if we have a huge number of children, say in an area where we don't have a lot of preschools, that's then going to put a pressure on the sector. So for example, in Newport, we have a lot of preschools in Newport. In West White, we don't. So if we have an influx of children that come into the West White area, we're going to struggle to be able to place them in the West White area. So it's thinking about those children that come into the market, where they're coming in, and being able to map those places for those children. You know, we have a huge number of children in the Newport area because that's where most people travel in to work. But there is still a need in the other areas on the island. So I think it's just considering, you know, when we have the rollout in September 2025, where those children are going across the island.
A geographical as much as number of placement challenges. Rob, have you got a question? If you can.
Yeah, I
Hello,
do,
Rob.
if that's okay. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
All right.
You may have already answered it to some degree, because I think you referred to a recruitment campaign for childminders, and I don't know if I missed it. But does that include helping private nurseries and so on in recruitment? Because I understand that's quite a challenge in this sector. Certainly, it is on the mainland for companies that I know provide preschools. Is that the same on the island, where recruitment for private suppliers, if you like, it is a challenge as well as for that of childminders? Thank you.
Unfortunately, yes, it is a challenge, and I think as we can see across the country, that lots of really experienced early years practitioners are leaving due to the low wages, and as we've spoke about, the number of children with special educational needs coming through from a young age. It's a really big responsibility for these practitioners who are on low wages that are working from 8 till 6 with particular children. So unfortunately, we do see lots of practitioners, experienced practitioners, leaving. Again, we have that stretch of water, so it's quite difficult to have practitioners coming over, but we do advertise for practitioners and we do deliver training for practitioners, and we do campaign for, you know, to try and increase that number on the island, but it is a challenge.
Thank you. But the sort of current ratios, and you mentioned there's plenty of sufficiency of places. Currently, there's not a sort of an urgent issue at the moment, or do you see that on the horizon?
Not at the moment. We're not following national figures, because national figures, having conversations with colleagues in Hampshire, and actually their figures for early years, they are really struggling in terms of having enough practitioners in their settings. At the moment, we are not there. And I think, again, it will be linked to the new rollout of the extended entitlements. How many children actually come into the sector will then affect those ratios and what that looks like for our early years sector. And also bearing in mind that some of our special educational needs children need one-to-one in terms of ratios. So that's quite difficult as well. So at the moment, I don't see it as a problem. It is something that we will monitor moving forward, and we will continue to campaign to make sure that we have enough practitioners on the island.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you.
No, I don't detect any complacency in your encouraging report, because you know where we are now is good, but you're aware of the threats, and which is, you know, encouraging to hear. So if there are no more questions, I propose from the chair that we note the report. Everyone in favour of noting the report? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Chair. This is a verbal update, so please do ask any questions at the end of it, and I'll keep it quite short. Our plan at the moment, we've identified 201 additional special educational needs places across the island that we can deliver within an 18-month period. This is a variety of primary and secondary places that will cater for a variety of different special educational needs, including autism, cognition and learning, sensory, specific learning difficulties, and social, emotional, mental health needs. These 201 places are initially aimed at reducing our EOTAS packages, which we've inherited, and want to bring them down, because children are best served in a school environment where they're safer and we can meet their needs better and ensure that they are on pathways to adulthood and successful routes onto college, training, whatever that may be. We also are looking at reducing the number of mainland places to try and keep children on the island with their communities and their families. We think that's really important for the island and for the families here. We are looking at developing this further. As you're probably aware, we have about a 9% growth of EHCPs on the island year on year. We are initially working on our high cost packages and safeguarding of children. That's our main priority. So that's the reason for giving you a verbal update, is because obviously with the school place planning, it's incredibly sensitive around the primary aspects. So our main focus at the moment is on secondary. And then once we name and we're progressing with the school place planning, we can then work on going forth with our primary expansion plans. Notwithstanding that, we have, as you're all aware, we've got two special schools on the island, St George's and Medina House, and we also have the Island Learning Centre. They are crucial in our plans for developing our places, and I was very pleased last night to welcome a number of people to the Island Learning Centre to see the refurbished rooms that we've developed for vocational pathways. And just to clarify, EOTAS is educated other than at school. So that's for children that are on packages rather than in a specific learning environment. We feel that that's going to be safer for children. So I wanted to give that update because I think it's a really important point. It's a really positive news story for the island. We're lucky that we're able to do that. We feel that we can do that at quite a reduced cost, but actually it will save us money overall, especially some of these higher cost packages that we take to the mainland, where we have got children that are away from their families and travelling for quite extensive periods of time in taxis and on boats. So we feel it'd be better for them to be on the island with their families and community and have less time travelling. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Naomi. And it is, you know, it's very exciting, really. I mean, that's quite a hell of a statement, 201. What what you're concerned about the handbrakes? What are likely the things that get in the way of being able to deliver it?
At the moment, it's around, I'm very conscious about school place planning, and so it's about being really considerate with our papers that come to cabinet for approval. I don't want to, I'm really conscious about the well-being of our staff and our primary sector. So we've paused on any other developments there. Obviously, we have the Greenmount RP that we're working on at the moment, the expansion there. But I don't want to send mixed messages out to the primary sector. But we are going to utilise Medina House Special School there. And I think that the handbrakes are that with the number of EHCPs coming through, tribunals can direct. That takes us over our 10%. We want to try and retain and stay within the 10% because it gives us capacity as a local authority. So it's about, we have to deliver on this to catch up to where we need to be and ensure that children have the right pathways. At the moment, we don't feel that they have, and we need to do some work around that and ensure that we have that therapeutic offer that will meet the needs, children's needs better.
I've got one question, actually, the head of a bold statement, 201 a place in 18 months. I'm impressed with that. So we'll, in 18 months' time, we'll have that on the agenda to name that. So that's a real bold statement. Also, the reducing mainland places, that's really expensive. It's not just about places. I don't think, how are you going to do that? Because some of the needs are more complex than the simple travelling to mainland because there's no places. It's a bit more complex. So I'm interested in how are you going to reduce these mainland placements?
A really good question. So for the most complex children, obviously, we need to provide the best possible placement, and that could be on the mainland. But we have got a situation, if I use an example, we have across the country, you normally have HI, which is you have hearing impairment, visual impairment, and physical disabilities, and they're normally kept separately. So you might have a hearing impairment, you know, resource provision, or a visual impairment resource provision. By combining that into sensory and having a sensory provision on the island, we can cater for the needs of our children who may have a hearing impairment or being deaf, or have a visual impairment, or have a physical disability. And rather than send them to a very expensive mainland placement, we can meet their needs in a school, because cognitively a number of those children are, you know, able to perform with their peers, but removing them and taking them to another school takes them away from their families. And some of the feedback we've had from families is actually they would like a provision on the island. They don't want to send their children onto the mainland just because they have a special educational needs, which they can overcome with the right support. So it's about going around looking at the needs of the children and what we can deliver on the island. So we're in negotiation with a number of head teachers and governing bodies at the moment. Obviously, we're not at a place where we can name, but we have got the plans in place for that. So we feel that's a really good way of reducing those really expensive packages, but more importantly, keeping the children with their community.
Thank you very much. And again, a detailed verbal update is really, you know, I look forward to our 201 places. That's a nice, it's nice to have a bold statement like that, because it gives you the encouragement, as Councillor Quigley said, it gives you the encouragement of saying, right, we're going to do 201 places in 18 months. To sort some of the problems.
Came yesterday, you saw that we delivered on the IRC, that was great. And, you know, I look forward to the new academic year and the delivery at the St George's Studio site in East Cowes, because that's a really exciting development for SCMH, which is social, emotional, mental health. Thank you.
This was just for information, so we just note the information we've been provided this evening. So we'll move on, if we may. So,
is this the right time to comment on the learning centre that we went to yesterday? Some of us, it was.
you may, yes.
This is obviously educational needs, and I'll tell you, I was absolutely blown over. So anybody who hasn't visited, I know Councillor Bacon was there. It really is such an inspiration, and that is how I came away. I thought this is inspirational. So thanks to everybody involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your counsel. I'm sure officers will appreciate your kind words. So thank you very much. Item 10, we couldn't let Debbie leave without giving her final fostering report. So are you doing the adoption one as well? Okay, we'll do the fostering one first. Councillor Quigley has got 20 minutes left on his schedule. So if we break this down into like 2 10-minute sections, if we can, we might be lucky enough to get through. So I'll assume everyone's read the fostering report. I can't promise everyone's read the adoption report because it's too long, but
It is
the
very long, isn't it?
fostering one, just the salient points you wish to pick out, and then we'll open up to questions.
Yes, so this is the update of the fostering service. So the Isle of Wight foster carers, those that are approved by the council. I bring this report every year. So here we are. So the local authority this year, in terms of the highlights, the fostering service was inspected by Ofsted as part of the full ILACS inspection. They gave us lots of really positive feedback. Unfortunately, not much of it made it into the report, as is often the case. But the feedback that was in the report was positive, and the feedback that we received verbally was incredibly positive too. So that's good. In terms of marketing, we do a number of awareness raising events. Those have really taken off again. Obviously, they slowed down over the last couple of reports that I had done because they were really impacted by COVID. No longer the case. We've got lots of people going out there and spreading the word, and that's really important because although we don't get lots of leads directly from those events, what does happen is people come back, they Google fostering, and we need to make sure that they've seen us out there so that they can do that. That's been really positive. We know that 24% of our inquiries are generated from word of mouth as well, so we really make sure that we work upon that. The thing that we all need to be aware of is around the digital marketing. That is a really big area for us. That's really important. We're upping our social media presence, etc. But our website is very difficult for people to navigate because it's a council website and it's not built around fostering. So that's something that we've grappled with. We've worked with CESLIP over a number of years, the South East group, to look at with other fostering local authority fostering teams, how each local authority manages their inquiries. The feedback from that has been really positive. So we pick up the phone really well. They rate us. It's a kind of secret shopping thing. They rate us against other local authorities. We always come out really high. So we know that our ability to meet with inquiries, but when they looked at our website, we got the lowest marks we've ever had, quite significantly. So we know that that's a real issue for us. And we've been working with other teams in the council to try and work our way around how can we get a better website that people can access, because when people Google fostering, they look at a range of different websites. They're likely to look at private agency websites. So we need to make sure that the work that we're doing is really up there, that we want them to choose us over other people. So that's something that we are working on. In terms of our recruitment, it's fallen short a little bit. It's a little bit lower than it was last year. But in terms of our inquiries, we're finding that we're converting more inquiries through to foster carers. So that's positive, because historically we had a real issue with our efficiency. So our marketing was that we were getting lots and lots of inquiries through. So we're having lots to deal with, but actually at the end of it, very few people were going on to be foster carers. That's changed and that's improved. It's improved again from last year, but we do need to generate more inquiries in the beginning, not just anybody, but people that are going to be the right people that are going to go through to be foster carers. So there is still work to do on that. What we have seen is, unlike other local authorities, we haven't lost as many foster carers. So we've actually got more households than we had last year by one, but in other local authorities they've reduced. So that is really positive. And you can, if you've had a look at the report, the number of inquiries is quite a bit less, but the number of actual approvals is only one less. So we're doing okay in terms of the conversion, but the website, I think, would be critical to get people in. In terms of the team, how the team are operating in terms of the support of foster carers, it's really good. And we're seeing that as a result of that, we are retaining foster carers, which is very positive. But also when foster carers do leave, we're seeing that more of them are for positive reasons. So if, for example, our biggest number 4 was as a result of a special guardianship order being applied for a child. So the children are still there, but the carer's no longer fostering and that child's no longer in care. So that's really positive, but we've lost that foster carer. So our numbers might have gone down, but the children are still there and the work is actually better than it was before because we've got less children in care. So that's positive. We're seeing children returning to parents, and sometimes with connected carers, if they're only connected for that one child, if children return to parents, then they'll no longer foster. But Bernie and her team are very good at talking to people about converting to general carers when we think that that is something that would be positive. So there's lots of good news in there. I would say there's been a much higher level of compliance across all areas. And I remember bringing this report for the first time and the compliance wasn't good. And we were all worried about that. But Bernie's done an amazing job with her team around, we've seen 100% supervisions of foster carers. That's not easy to do. They're busy people. The unannounced visit has really improved. They've got new arrangements around that to make them not only is there more compliance, they're actually better quality because they've got other people other than the supervising social worker going in and having a good safeguarding eye on those children. So real positives. We've also seen placement stability improve over time. Both the short-term placement stability, so when we first place children within the first year, and even that number's better than our target. But within that, we look at why those numbers are higher, and quite often it's because children have moved with parents as part of an assessment. So we're not seeing children having more than 3 moves because placements are unstable very often at all. I'm not saying it never happens. It does happen on occasion, but those children are doing much better. We're seeing children staying in the same placements. We're seeing us getting the matches right more quickly. And we're seeing that where children have moved from one place for another, when we look at it, it's because the parent has moved with the child, maybe from a foster care placement to living in their own home. So in terms of assessments, the timeliness is really good. That's improved over time, and the quality of assessments. I met with a panel advisor, that's really improved as well. So I don't know if I've got anything else I need to say. Any questions?
Yeah, what's CESLIP? Southeast.
CESLIP, Southeast. I should also say we're doing regional recruitment with them as well. So there's a regional recruitment group. We're part of that now. So some of our fostering recruitment will be done. It will continue to do some ourselves, but some of it will be done in the southeast across that, using that group, so that there is some joint advertising that's done. And for those people that come forward from the Isle of Wight, they will come to us. So that's really positive too.
I just have one sensible question, because obviously you mentioned in your report about if someone's looking to foster, they tend to go to private sites rather than come to council, and that's always been the case. Do they is it a massive difference in the amount of money paid for a private agency to the council?
No, it's not, but there are some differences. And I think sometimes, different agencies pay different amounts, but I think the amount we pay is much greater than the amount that the foster carers receive. So there's not a massive difference in some cases in the amount that the foster carers receive, but in terms of the cost to us, it's very different.
That's the quickly.
Thank you, Debbie, for your last report, and well done, Bernie. That's really good results. I think just as a practical point, and what's holding up the website, your own website? Why can't that happen?
The council has one website and is not keen to have several websites. So it's about thinking, how can we be creative about how we achieve that? And that has been a difficulty for a number of years. And when the council had the new website, we were hoping that that was going to kind of help us to be able to be more creative within it, but it's quite difficult. It's been quite difficult, but we think we might be it's something that we're working on again, and we're hoping we might get a breakthrough.
Because that seems crazy. That seems like something we should be able to resolve fairly easily. Because if it means you convert two families to use the council and not private fostering, then we've saved any money that the website might have cost. And also, so it just, I mean, from your point of view, it just seems a handbrake we shouldn't have created for you. You know, it's sort of, it's tying your hands behind your back.
I don't think the problem is the cost of it. I think it's about the council as an organisation having lots of different websites and wanting, it's not unusual for councils to want everything to go through one and then branch out. And it's about us finding a way to make that work so that for the user, it looks as beautiful as the glossy one that the agencies are able to create, because they don't need to have that same kind of gov website.
I still think we're unnecessarily causing you bother. Sorry, Kate.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's an issue that we're going to pick up. So what Bernie and I will do, given that Debbie's leaving us, working with Mark Rodwell, who's coming in, we're going to look at our whole sufficiency strategy, which is about how we create the right homes for the right children at the right time. That's also going to include re-looking at our fostering strategy for recruitment, retention and marketing. So within that will be our website. So we'll look at a strategy for how we change that view.
And the reason I'm only pushing this because that is something we should be able to do politically, is help you push that, because that just seems crackers.
Debbie, thank you for your fostering report. We need to note the report. Yeah, are we happy to note the receipt of the report, the annual receipt of the report? Thank you. And the adoption one, which is about 10 times bigger. Would you like to pick out, I assume everyone's read it. So Debbie, do you want to pick out any points on the adoption one?
Sorry, the Adopt South report is obviously very large because it covers all of the local authorities that they cover. What I would say in summary is the service that the Isle of Wight Council gets from its partnership with Adopt South has worked really in our favour. And we have seen really good outcomes for children as a result. So that has continued this year, which is really positive. In terms of their recruitment of adopters, they've continued to do that on the Isle of Wight so that they have a presence on the Isle of Wight. They've done various marketing, included the Isle of Wight. They even do Isle of Wight radio and the Isle of Wight County Press to make sure that they are targeting people on the Isle of Wight that want to adopt, which is really positive. And people come to the island in order to do adoption events. They also are really proactive in terms of the regional advertising they do. They've done some really positive campaigns around some particularly difficult children who've needed really specialist adopters. That hasn't necessarily benefited us this year in terms of those particular campaigns, but what we know is they're really good at doing that. So if that's what we need, they've been really successful at it. They've done the really good stuff around a particular child they talk about in their report called Noah. So lots of really positive work that they have done to get parents for children who it has been difficult to find them initially, and that might be because a range of reasons that children have got different needs that need a particular type of adopter or a couple. They've done lots of awareness raising events as well across the south, which really helps us, because although it's great that they do lots of events or some events on the Isle of Wight, we don't always want for the children that we need to find parent or parents for, they don't always need to be on the Isle of Wight. So it's important that they do all of the stuff that they do across the south so that children can go to the right places for them. In terms of the numbers, 4 families have been identified for children, a sibling group of 3, a child over the age of 5 are all matched. There was 1 child waiting at the time of this report, and I thought you'd want to know that that child has now been linked. Oh no, they're in the process of meeting someone. So they're a child that have got specific health needs that we need to make sure we get the right parents for that can meet those health needs. So it's taken us a little bit longer, as it sometimes does. But we have got a couple that we are in the process of talking about that child's needs, and hopefully that child will be linked with that couple. We've had no disruptions. We haven't had any disruptions since I'm not suggesting this is anything to do with me, but in the time that I've reported, there's never been any. So that's really positive. So, and it went on before that too. So that's really positive. We've got excellent scorecards in terms of the children. That isn't always the case, because sometimes children take a bit longer to find the right family for, but and that's fine. If that's what's needed, we make sure that we find families for children whenever we can, and if that takes a bit longer, it takes a bit longer, and our scorecard doesn't look as good as it might, that's fine. But at the moment, it's really good. So what the scorecards are about is how long it takes you for children to be with their family and then to get an adoption order, and that's working really well. So we're doing well within the government threshold in both areas. So there's been, I think, around the same level of, there's been 133% increase in adoption orders for last year. What we would say is historically, adoption orders weren't happening as quickly as we liked, because there was a backlog that took a long time to clear, and the courts were only hearing adoption orders 4 times a year. That's no longer the case. We're seeing them come through really quickly. And we had one, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago that had happened in a few months, I think. Yeah. So that's really positive, and parents are feeling confident to apply for those orders quite quickly because of the quality of the matching. And what I would say is that the quality of the work that takes place between our children's team and Adopt South to prepare children for matches is really, really high quality. And we have been able to place a number of sibling groups this year, which has been really positive. So we've had one sibling group of 3 that were placed this year, and another one that was matched, I think, and our place now. So real positives. I don't know if you've got any questions.
Any questions from councillors? Councillor Quigley.
Well, it's not really a question. It's just the reason the report's so big is when Adopt South came last year, they did a fantastic presentation on what they did. And I think this does show the importance of us working with specialist providers in this area, because, you know, I'm sure it's not perfect. I'm not going to pretend it is. However, everything's going in the right direction, which is a really, really happy story, I guess. I guess it'd be difficult to answer what you'd want to wave your magic wand at, but if there was anything in particular that we can help with, is there anything?
Terms of adoption, I think, to be fair, I think in terms of adoption, the partnership with Adopt South is working really well for us. And I don't know that, you know, we've had no disruptions, haven't had to pay for any placements. Children are being placed within the scorecard. I think if we could continue doing as well as we're doing now, we'd be happy. In terms of fostering, I think that's a different story. I think, you know, there's work to do. There are gaps in terms of the quality. the confidence of foster carers, not the quality. We've got some excellent foster carers, but we need to we could do some work around the confidence. It would be good if we had foster carers that were confident to support children through more challenging periods, to keep children on the island, to stick with children when they're going through really challenging times. And I think for some foster carers are able to do that, but in terms of some local authorities and some agencies would have specialist foster carers that are really experienced at managing children through the most challenging times, and I don't think we have that. And that will take some work in terms of training and other things.
Work alongside those foster carers.
So that's about the sufficiency.
Thank you. Just in regards to what councillors can do to support, I think it's being aware of our corporate parenting responsibilities, and my plea would be that any environment you are in where you have an audience, where you're having conversations, whether that be one-to-one or a wider audience, that we promote and talk about corporate parenting responsibilities, about how we want to create and provide homes for our children on the island. And that includes encouraging people to think about fostering, and people from all different backgrounds, walks of life. So yeah, we're inviting people to think about being foster carers. Bernie and Debbie are right. We also want experienced people. So part of our strategy going forward will no doubt be looking at perhaps we can be a fostering friendly organisation and council, so that we have flagship, we can have a branding, we can then get local businesses and so forth to take on those branding ideas also, so that we're promoting fostering wider, potentially with police colleagues, teachers and so forth. So whatever opportunities you have, that would be my plea. Talk about our children that we're responsible for, and you know, encouraging people to provide homes if they can.
Just for clarity, on the report that comes with the other report, the 3-page report, the background statistics are all Adopt South statistics, aren't they? So where it says like 6 children placed externally for 224,000, that's external to the Adopt South region. A percentage of that comes down to us, I guess, does it? What percentage of that comes down to the Isle of Wight Council? Is it a quarter with Hampshire and Portsmouth and Southampton? Is it a...
It's not separated. It's not separated in terms of a quarter, because we obviously have much less children. So it's done on a proportional basis. And I think as an island, we were paying for placements prior to Adopt South, so we weren't able to go out there and find families for children, and now Adopt South are able to find families for our children, so that's really positive. And all of those families have been, you know, they've done well. Children are getting adoption orders, so the quality is good.
I think Adopt South been obviously when it was signed up, I was cabinet when we signed up to it. I think it has worked. And your report indicates that Adopt South has been a success. So thank you for your report, and you know, your last 4 years, whatever, of work here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Quigley, thank you for staying 4 minutes beyond the time I was going to say. So the formal part of the meeting, I think we'll have to end at this stage as we're no longer core 8. So thank you. Stop recording. But we can still carry on informal.